Ruin My Childhood.
Hello, and welcome to Ruin My Childhood, the podcast where we decide if some things are better left in the past. I'm Kat.
I'm Mike.
And today we are talking about one of our childhood classic favorites, My Girl. What do you remember about this movie, Michael?
Honestly, I don't remember much about this movie. As people who've listened to this podcast will know, I'm a big Macaulay Culkin fan. I grew up idolizing the kid. And this movie was really hard for me because I remember watching this movie as a kid, and I remember him dying in this movie, and I was devastated.
It's pretty rough.
Other than that, the only thing I really remember is, I don't know the exact time period, but I know this was in like the 50s, 60s, I think. I don't know the exact time frame. And I just remember this girl, I don't remember her name, but it's Anna Klumsky. She's in Veep now. And Macaulay Culkin are like best friends, and they just have like a summer together. I think it's just like a summer, like the life of that summer, I guess.
Yeah.
That's all I really remember. I know Dan Aykroyd plays the dad, but other than that, I really don't remember much about this movie.
Yeah, it is interesting. I've always remembered loving this movie, and I thought I'd seen it more recently, but when I really think about it, I probably haven't watched this movie since I was a little kid.
Yeah, I definitely remember my mom rented it a couple of times. I definitely remember being devastated when Macaulay Culkin's character died by all the bees. But I remember wanting to watch it again, and I know my mom rented it again. So I've seen this more than one time, but I definitely think I got kind of destroyed both times that I watched this movie.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Although I was kind of a weird, morbid little kid, so I'm wondering if maybe I was a little, not desensitized, but if maybe it didn't affect me as much, because I remember just really liking this movie.
The only other thing I think I remember, and I could be wrong, is I think Anna Klumsky, I can't even pronounce her name, Anna Klumsky, it's like Chlumsky. I think she was one of those kids that were like, spoke to adults in a way that's kind of like off-putting for adults. Like she spoke to them.
Precocious?
Yeah, she's precocious. I want to say she was taking like she had a relationship with like a teacher, not like a sexual relationship, but like I feel like there was an adult character that she latched onto kind of inappropriately, but that's me like grasping at straws. I really don't remember.
I remember that it had a lot of themes in it that a lot of kids like in their, I don't know, like late childhood, prepubescent phase.
Tweens.
Are thinking about. And I think that was part of the appeal of it because I was very little when I watched it. And, you know, when you're a little kid, you kind of want to be a teenager. That's right. Your whole, your MO. Life is about that. What I remember about this movie, other than really liking it, is that Veda had...
Is that the Anna Klumsky's character's name?
Yes.
What a weird name.
I love it.
Interesting.
I think it's a cool name.
Yeah, interesting.
She had a mood ring.
Darth Vader.
Anyway, thanks for making it about you.
Sorry, go ahead. What did you remember?
She had a mood ring, and after she had a mood ring, everyone had a mood ring.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
I thought she had like a necklace or something. It was a ring, huh?
She had a mood ring, and she was a trendsetter.
That's right.
At least the character was a trendsetter. I can't remember anyone else having a mood ring, but after that, they were all the rage. I remember thinking that they were idiots for poking a beehive because everyone knows you don't mess with a beehive.
Right.
And I remember the scene where she gets her period and Macaulay Culkin's character comes over and knocks on the door and wants to, play like any other day. And she like shoves him, like straight up shoves him and is like, "Don't come back for 4 to 6 days." And like slams the door.
I don't remember that at all. That's hilarious.
Because I remember being a little kid and being like, 4 to 6 days, you're going to bleed from your vagina? Oh my God.
I don't trust anything that bleeds for 5 days and doesn't die. That's from South Park. I'm sorry.
Sounds about right. Other than that, yeah, the kid dies. It's very traumatizing.
It's kind of messed up, but I actually took a still from this movie, his funeral scene, and put it in one of our teasers for the Pagemaster episode with the Jacob Ladder scenario.
You're a cold person.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was a big family movie at the time. Oh,
I remember
that she had a really cool dad.
Dan Aykroyd.
Is it Dan Aykroyd?
It's Dan Aykroyd.
I don't remember who had played. I remember she had a thinking that her dad was super cool. But other than that, I'm kind of going into this blind other than knowing that it's probably a good movie.
Yeah, I mean, it made a sequel, so it had to.
There was a sequel.
Yeah, there was a sequel.
Why can't you can't make a sequel when the kid dies?
Well, I mean, the main character didn't die.
Okay.
Should we just get into our listener submissions?
Sure.
So we had a bunch, like several talking about Macaulay Culkin's death. So I'm not going to read any particulars, just Macaulay Culkin died, like almost verbatim, like 5 or 6 of them like that.
Y'all are a bunch of downers.
But I did have Jessica Gibson said, one of my favorite movies, I used to have a ring that looked like Veda's that I wouldn't leave the house without. And then there's a laughing and crying emoji. Good movie choice.
Thank you, Jessica.
Yes, thank you, Jessica.
I thought so. Renee Myers said, I thought she was such a badass doing makeup for dead people. I wanted to do makeup for dead people. I don't know. I have no idea.
I have no idea what that means. Dead people.
Is this the wrong movie?
Wait, is it, like, are they talking specifically about Macaulay Culkin?
I don't know. Maybe. I think we're just going to have to watch the movie.
Like, maybe his face got messed up by the bees and they had to, like, make up the bee stings off of him. I have no idea. I think we just need to watch it.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure when they embalm you, the swelling would go down, so...
I mean, not if they use too much embalming.
Oh, God.
Like, this is kind of set. So when my grandfather passed away, like, and we got to see, we had the viewing, I don't know what they did, but he actually looked more plump than he was before he passed away. Like, remember? So, like, it was very obvious to my grandfather, but he looked a little
He
off,
looked the way he would look if he wasn't dehydrated his entire life, probably.
I guess.
Y'all are dehydrated. Go drink some water.
But I don't want to talk about my grandfather. Let's watch this movie.
All right.
I guess you said what can make me feel this way, my girl, my girl, my girl, talking about my girl, my girl.
All right, we are back from watching My Girl. I'm traumatized.
I am traumatized too.
Oh my God.
Like,
What were we thinking?
So
I had warm, fuzzy memories of this movie. We watched this as kids.
and the thing that's crazy about it is,
This is a recurring theme on this podcast where we watch stuff that were obviously family movies. They were clearly family movies in the 90s. And then we watch them again and we're like, holy cow, was no one thinking about our feelings?
right. Well, the thing that's a little weird is, so this movie is, I don't want to say it's slow, but there's not a lot going on.
It's not slow.
Like,
it's a slice of life.
Yeah, it's a slice of, like, it really is just this
Nostalgia.
is her summer. Like, this is the summer of this little girl.
1972.
Yeah, 1972. And, Macaulay Culkin's character dies in the last, like, 15, 20 minutes of the movie. And it basically just ends with his death, the funeral, and then her making one new friend. So it kind of ends on a downer. Like, I came out of this movie, like, emotionally devastated a little bit. I definitely teared up watching this movie. And I wasn't ready for that.
I started sobbing.
You definitely sobbed.
Yeah.
But that being said, it was a good movie. Like, it was a very good movie.
You want to do a summary?
Yeah. It's very simple plot. Like Katrina said, it started in, it takes place in 1972. And Veda is...
Where are they supposed to be?
I don't know where they're supposed to be. Honestly, I don't think it really matters. I think it's
Missouri or something?
It's just like middle America, just, small town life. And she lives in a mortuary. Her father is a mortician, and, that's what they do. They put on funerals for everybody. And she is very precocious. It starts off, like, I wrote it down. I paused the movie and rewound it several times to get this quote, because it was a shocking quote, and it was really good. So, I was born jaundiced. Once I sat on a toilet seat at a truck stop and caught hemorrhoids. I've learned to live with this chicken bone that's been lodged in my throat for the past 3 years. So I knew my dad would be devastated when he learned of my latest affliction. Yes, there's a pause, and then she says to Dan Aykroyd's character, Dad, I don't want to upset you, but my left breast is developing at a significantly faster rate than my right. It can only mean one thing: cancer. I'm dying. And then her dad says, "Okay, sweetie, hand me the mayo out of the fridge." And so
he's just so used to it.
This is her, and this is you.
Synopsis.
So anyway, that's basically that character, and it's just her hanging out with Macaulay Culkin's character Tom, just having fun on the summer. She falls in love with her teacher and decides to steal money from one of his dad's employees to go
Why do you keep saying him?
What did I say?
His dad's employees.
Did I say his dad?
Yes.
Oh, Jesus, I'm stupid.
Twice.
So she steals money from her dad's employee, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, who ultimately they have a romantic thing go on eventually, but she goes to the summer class with her teacher because she's in love with her teacher and wants to marry him. And that's kind of what it is. It's just the summer of her becoming like a teenager. Mm-hmm. And
it's a coming of age film.
Yeah, that's really is. There aren't any there's not really any arcs, really. There's not a ton of things that happen. It's just the life of this girl, like this 11, 12-year-old.
That's one thing I really love about this movie, though, because it's a coming of age story. But it also includes this, like, immense trauma in her life. Well, and it includes, like, her struggles. And I think that's something that you don't see a lot of in these movies, where it's integrating, like, this innocence of childhood. And, she comes from... I mean, they have their struggles. Her mother's dead. But she has a solid foundation. She has a great father. She has her family around her.
Great friends.
Her dad's employee, who eventually becomes her stepmother, is like the ideal stepmother.
Right.
And like sometimes like things just go sideways in life. And I think you don't see very much in film, like kids dying.
Yeah, which is a big part of why I didn't like the newest It movie.
Yeah, yeah.
But there was just something so sweet and innocent about this movie. Like one of the most famous scenes in this movie is when Macaulay Culkin's character Thomas kisses Veda, and they just kind of have this moment where they're sitting under this willow tree and they talk about like, why do people get married? And they're just like, it's just what you do when you get old.
Yeah,
and kind of thing. They're like, do you think we should kiss? And they're like, kind of like, okay. And then they just have this like sweet little kiss, and it's just so innocent, and they have all these like philosophical kind of conversations that they really have no insight into how the world actually works, and it's just it's endearing and sweet.
And they show all these weird things that kids do, like so Veda's a complete and total hypochondriac, which...
Oh my god, she's just like you.
Okay, I was not a hypochondriac.
I mean, you legitimately had a
tumor for 16 years, and they told me I was a hypochondriac, so that's the thing.
But just the way she spoke to people.
The dinner table, she was lying. Okay, so she was me in that way.
Right, just laying on the floor. What did she say in that moment?
I don't remember, but she was convinced that she was dying.
Right. And she does this thing. It's really fun. So after she has that weird kind of like monologue saying she's jaundiced and has a chicken bone lodged in her throat and all this stuff, and kind of like tries to creep out her dad, it just cuts to this scene where all these little boys are waiting outside of the house, and she takes their money to show them a dead body, and she brings them downstairs and there's no body there, and she goes,
Baller.
Sometimes they walk around, and then she shows them her like, it's kind of dark and morbid, but her grandmother's basically a mute. And
she's in advanced stages of dementia.
And so she shows all these little boys her grandmother
sitting in the
rocking chair perfectly still, and then all of a sudden she starts rocking and the boys like freak out and run out. And Thomas is just sitting there because he knows what's going on, because that's his best friend.
I love these characters. I love the characters. I love the script. Like this is a flawless script.
Oh, it's great. Oh, I remember what she said at the dinner table. So Jamie Lee Curtis shows up, and she's a makeup artist, and she's responding to an ad and then finds out it's for the mortuary, and she decides to take the job anyway, and she comes over for dinner, and Veda's lying on the floor, and she goes, oh, my prostate.
Because the guy who's on the table downstairs died of prostate cancer. I love it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the characters.
Yeah.
So Veda, amazing character. She's so complex. I love that she has her quirks, but she also has really sweet, nice things about her. I mean, it is kind of typical that she's, becoming a young woman and her mother's dead. We see that a lot in film, but it actually adds to the story in this scenario, whereas a lot of times that's a plot device that we could quite frankly do without.
What I really liked was her interactions with Jamie Lee Curtis. So initially she was completely just, I don't want to say in love with her, but she really just kind of latched on to Jamie Lee Curtis.
Because she's
this
a
is
cool
the first
character.
Strong female that she's been around.
She shows up in a Winnebago.
Shows her how to do makeup. And then she has this struggle because then her dad falls in love with her. And so now she has to like grapple with the fact that she's not getting all the attention that she normally gets from her dad. And there's another woman in her dad's life. And so there's this like ambiguity of like, I really like this woman, but she's also stealing my dad.
Right.
And everything. And it's, once again, it's sweet and innocent, but also it makes for a great story. Like, and there are other movies that do this, but it was just like, there was a lot of the other movies from this time frame would just be like, she's terrible, I hate her. And then there's one bonding moment, and then all of a sudden they love each other. And this, it was almost the opposite, where it's like, I love her. Oh, I hate her. Okay, she's all right.
Right. And pretty much the entire time that she's hating the character.
Thomas.
What?
Thomas, played by Macaulay Culkin's like, she's great. What are you talking about? Like, everybody else likes her.
Okay, so what's Jamie Lee Curtis's character's name?
Shelley, I think.
So the entire time that Veda is in the phase where she's hating Shelley is just completely oblivious to it.
Right.
Which I love, because it's reality.
Or she chooses to ignore it.
Right. But I think for the most part, she's just she's thinking it's just kid behavior.
Being kid, yeah.
There's a bumper car scene that I absolutely love.
That was
so
great.
They go to the carnival, and that's when Veda notices that Shelley is wearing an engagement ring. And she's like, oh, where did you get that ring? And that's when they choose to tell her that they got engaged. And then right after that, they go to like play in the bumper cars, and Veda just has it in for her.
He just keeps ramming her and like T-boning her over and over and over again.
Which, like, let's be real, that's kind of what you do with people you like in bumper cars. At least I do.
Or just the person you know.
Right.
You just keep ramming the person you know. But yeah, I mean, their relationship was great. And then what I liked about Shelley, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, is, she came in and she was initially a little intimidated by the job. Like, she didn't realize she was applying to be like a makeup artist at a mortuary, but then she takes on the challenge, and then she immediately just kind of like,
well, she takes it on because she's desperate for money,
so which we find out later why.
You kind of see that flash over her face, and she's just like, I just really need this job.
Yeah, but then she kind of like challenges Dan Aykroyd and like, hey, you've got this little girl and she clearly is having some issues, and you need to do that. And so initially Dan Aykroyd's kind of like, back off, don't tell me what to do with my daughter, but then quickly realizes that she's probably right and has some insight, and Dan Aykroyd falls for her almost immediately. And I thought that was really sweet, because he mentions, I haven't had a date in 20 years, and they go and do bingo, and
the bingo scene was so good.
Oh, that was so good. Tell us what happened.
So they're playing bingo, and Veda sneaks out, totally like leaves her grandma to fend for herself.
Yep.
Very irresponsible. She and Tom follow them to the place where they're playing bingo, and it's basically just the two characters and a bunch of old people. And
it was so dark. There was a couple of dark jokes in that scene.
There were a lot of dark jokes in this scene. So you finish it.
So they're playing bingo, and Jamie Lee Curtis all of a sudden like stops, like she kind of looks shocked, and I think Dan Aykroyd's character's name was Harry. Says like, what's the matter? She goes, I just realized like pretty soon I'm gonna be doing some of these people's makeup. And then he goes, where do you think the two vacant seat came from? Like implying the only reason they're able to play is because two old people died and there's space for them at the table.
I love it. But I mean, that's kind of like your life as a funeral director in a small town.
Right.
Like, everyone that you know, eventually they're going to be naked on your table.
Right.
You kind of have to maintain that sense of humor.
Yeah, and he does. And there's moments where Shelley challenges Harry's belief later on in the movie, but in this scene, she goes to kiss him, and Veda just yells, bingo, from like outside of the room. And
bingo.
Like, everybody starts fighting, because they're like, it came from outside, and who came from over there? And then, like, just the whole bingo night just fell apart. And I've always liked Jamie Lee Curtis. I think she's a fantastic actress.
She's fantastic in this movie, especially though.
She's fantastic in everything. Like, you go back to her early movies. Halloween, Trading Places, which is another movie she did with Dan Aykroyd. Even going to like Freaky Friday with Lindsay Lohan. Like, she's really good, and she doesn't do very much anymore. It's been a while since she's really done anything.
Everything she's done has been solid.
True Lies.
Yeah.
Incredible. So I really enjoyed watching her. Dan Aykroyd,
he kind of phoned it in.
he did. I didn't feel like he did anything special. He was fine. Like,
the character had good moments, but this movie wasn't about him.
Exactly.
And I appreciated that.
I did like the scene. I think his strongest scene was he was very reserved for most of the movie. But then once he started to fall for Shelley, there's a scene where they're having like a barbecue, and Shelley's ex-husband comes and starts hassling her about wanting the Winnebago back. And she kind of has an argument with him for a little bit, and then eventually Harry comes up and goes, just like punches him in the stomach like really hard, and he goes like, "Don't come back here," kind of thing. And then he looks at the guy that came with the ex-husband and goes, "Are you his brother?" And he goes, "Yeah, how'd you know?" He goes, "I didn't, but you're his brother?" And he goes, "Yep. I bet I'm going to be seeing a lot of you." And he goes, "Why?" He goes, "Because if he ever comes back, I'm going to kill him and bury him in the front yard. I'm assuming you're going to come visit him," or something along those lines.
No, he just said, "Because if he ever comes back, I'm going to bury him in my yard."
Right. Yeah, and it's like, damn, he got dark and everything, but it's also sweet at the same time.
That's ignoring the fact that it's a terrible idea to date an employee.
Right. Well, this is the 70s. In the 60s and 70s, all the men in power were banging their secretaries and marrying their secretaries. So, you know what? I'm fine with it.
My grandma was my grandfather's secretary.
I mean,
nothing happened.
You and I worked together.
Until he was divorced.
Right.
All right, then.
All right, moving right along.
So the character Veda is in love with her teacher,
Mr. Bixler.
And I love this because most young girls at some point will have a crush, like a totally inappropriate crush.
Right.
I don't know if guys kind of do that. Young girls definitely do it several times.
Right.
And it's not like you do anything about it. You just admire them from afar. But Veda is particularly precocious and aggressive. So she steals money from Shelley to take this class that he is offering over the summer.
For adults,
teaching poetry writing.
Oh, those poems were so good from the adult classmates.
Yes. So Veda shows up, and initially he's like, I don't know about this. But then, the people in the class are, mostly hippies. They're pretty chill. They're like, oh, well, I think it's great. She wants to write. So they bring Veda into this group, and they're taking this writing class together. And he's challenging her as an artist. He's like, that's great. You made a rhyming poem, but I want to see your soul. I want to understand what you're feeling. Go ahead.
Oh, man. So she writes this really sweet poem about ice cream, and like it just, what little kids write, like, ice cream's nice, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what it actually is, but it all rhymes. And then he says, like, I want to feel your emotion, your deepest, darkest secrets, like what you don't want to tell people. And then she goes, I'm pretty sure I killed my mother. And I'm like, holy.
That's her inner monologue, though. Right. So that's like.
No, I think she actually said it.
No, I don't think she said it.
Oh, I thought she said it, but either way, we heard it.
Right. So that's when you kind of feel the movie shift and you realize there's more to this story and this character. And I love that. But I also, I love that there were funny moments in each of these settings, but then there were also serious moments and some downright heavy moments. But then in the writing class,
she gets trapped in the basement.
Yeah, in the writing class, at one point they are meditating together, and so they join hands in a circle. And after they meditate, they go around and they're asking each other, what did you feel from this experience? And everyone's giving these really deep revelations that they had. And they get to Veda, and she said, I felt his hangnail.
Feel my aura.
I don't think I'm allowed to. So I really love that. I love that. It's like there wasn't really any one part of this movie that necessarily dragged. It was all necessary and interesting.
Right. Like, earlier I said the movie was slow, but it wasn't slow in that it just was not something that had a ton of things going on, but everything was relevant and everything had its place.
Right. And you start to see after a certain point that, Veda projects that she's this super confident kid and she's got it all together and she's fine with everything. And then She's bouncing a basketball in the hallway and it falls down to the basement and she goes to grab it. And while she's down there, Shelly shuts the door because, no one wants the dead people smell wafting into the house. And Veda's stuck down there. She can't get the door open. She completely flips out.
Loses it.
And panics. And that's sort of where Shelly realizes, okay, there's a little bit more going on here. And then I think that's really what creates the shift in her, where
Right.
first she was looking at this as a job, and it was nice that there's a family there, but suddenly she's feeling needed for the
Right.
first time in a long time, and it's kind of like what drives her to maybe get closer to them and have this desire to put down roots, and that sort of spurs her relationship forward with Harry.
Right, and then there's, oh man, that scene's so powerful because throughout the movie, so when this happens, there's another scene, of course, when Thomas dies, and then also later on she finds out that Mr. Bixler is actually engaged and is living with a woman, and every time she has this like traumatic moment or this moment where she doesn't know what to do or she can't handle it, she just sings, like, she puts her hands on her ears and starts screaming like, do what diddy diddy bum diddy, like that song.
Yeah.
And you see the hurt in her, and like what's incredible about it is this was her first movie. Like at the beginning of the movie it said introducing, and the way she actually got this movie, she was an extra in Uncle Buck, but she didn't have any actual acting credit. So this movie at the very beginning is like introducing. So I was really impressed with the range that this girl had.
Yeah.
But she hasn't done anything before.
She was really solid.
Really good.
And I loved just watching her relationship with Tom, and I think that's great.
Sweet.
And I can totally relate to that because the kid in the neighborhood that I spent all of my time with was Roberto next door, because his mother would watch me when my mom was at work, and then, all the other kids in the neighborhood, the girls were older than me. They were my sister's age, so they didn't want anything to do with me. Everyone else my age was a boy, and they'd hang out with me one-on-one if I was the only other kid who was home on the block. But then if they were all playing in a group, they wanted nothing to do with me. So Robert was kind of my only friend on the block for a really long time. We did everything together, and I can totally relate to like the teasing and, oh, it's your boyfriend, and how kids are just kind of brutal and relentless like that.
Right.
And, I don't think they even really understand the concept of boyfriend or girlfriend or it being negative or positive. They just see it as something to tease you for.
It's
and kids
icky.
will always find something to tease you about and then see how you react.
What I really liked about the relationship was Thomas clearly just loved being around her and was kind of like submissive towards her. And like there's a point where, like you mentioned, like little girls are like, oh, KISSING kind of thing. And then she's like, no, he's ugly kind of thing. And then there's another point where she says she only hangs out with people who stimulate her intellectually kind of thing. And he just kind of looks all smug. It's really funny. But then there's this really sweet moment after they kiss, and she says that she's going to marry Mr. Bixler. And he says, if that doesn't happen, or he goes,
would you think of me?
Would you think of me? And she goes, what do you mean? He goes, if Mr. Bixler doesn't happen, would you think of me? And I'm just like, that's so sweet. Like, and the whole time I'm like, you're going to die. And so it was so hard. It was just so hard to like watch this movie knowing that he's going to die, but like just really being in love with this kid. Like,
he's such a sweet character.
And the thing that like drove me crazy about this, and we just watched Point Break with our goddaughter, and I made a big point about how every death in that movie is 100% avoidable.
Right.
Like, this kid seemed way too smart to go out the way he did. So there's a point when and kids are stupid. They do stupid things even when they know they shouldn't. But they're walking through the woods and they see this beehive, and he's kind of like, oh, tight, a beehive. And he sprays it with the water gun, and then he throws a rock at it. And during that time, Veda loses her ring, and then she's all sad that she doesn't have the ring, and so he goes back by himself one day, and instead of just looking for the ring, he sees the beehive, and he decides to kick it, presumably to make sure that there weren't any bees there. But if there are bees, they're gonna get pissed off, and so he kicks it, and he's digging around, and he doesn't even notice the bees come, and then unfortunately he gets stung to death and dies. But it was so like he went out there to get that for this girl that he cared so much about, and it just tore my heart out watching that scene. I really don't have much more to talk about in this movie other than, like, you know, after the funeral she has a breakdown, then she gets a further breakdown when she's rejected by her teacher, and then, you know, she finds another friend who's a little girl, and they ride off into the sunset, and it's super sweet, you know, and it's the whole kids are resilient.
I appreciate that. Like, we lost my next door neighbor when I was a kid, and I'll never forget that moment when my parents told us.
Yeah.
But then, like, you start to... I like that the movie shows how resilient kids are.
Yeah,
because that is, like, the most devastating moment of your life when you're a kid, and you find a way through it, and the next month it's like, you know, you make new friends, and life goes on.
Yeah, they have, like, the little closing narration where they're like, so there was this one little girl towards the beginning of the movie when, like, 3 other girls were making fun of her, and she's like, oh, you can come hang out with us. They're like, no, they can't hang out. It was the same little girl comes back and, you know, before the funeral comes and wants to say hello and see how she's doing, and then they become friends because they're in the same grade. So it was really sweet. The only other scene I kind of want to talk about is the funeral scene when she's kind of still in denial. She doesn't want to go to the funeral, and this is the scene I was kind of talking about with Shelley challenging Harry again, is Veda doesn't want to go to the funeral, and Shelley goes to Harry and is like, your daughter needs you, and he goes, well, the funeral's going on, and she's like, you're always worried about the dead and you forget about the living, especially your daughter, like, go take care of her. And so he kind of like tucks his tail between his legs and doesn't do it. So Shelley goes and gets her, like, you should go down there. And eventually, you know, she goes down to the funeral and sees Tom, and of course is devastated, and, you know, jumps up on, like, the casket, like, where are his glasses? He can't see with his glasses, and he can't see without his glasses. And he was going to be not a doctor,
an acrobat.
He was going to be an acrobat or something like that, or he is going to be an acrobat. Like, she uses the future tense, and then Dan Aykroyd's character comes out and is like, he's gone. He is not going to be an acrobat. You need to understand he's not coming back. And then that's when she runs off, and the rest of the movie kind of happens. And
I think, and there are so many things in this movie that they do take you back to those devastating moments, like the first time you saw a body in a casket, and that, you know, it's them, but it's not them, and that uneasy feeling. And it's like, you know, I appreciate that they actually showed him.
Yeah, that was...
It wasn't all just sanitized. It was like, this is what it's like when a kid that you care about dies, and it's not pretty, and it's really freaking hard, but, you know, sometimes it happens.
They almost cut that scene, actually. So I did a little research on the movie, and with test audiences were, like, devastated when that character...
It's very uncomfortable.
And apparently in a different cut, they actually showed him, like, die, not just see a couple things, like, they actually saw him, like, collapse. But some people didn't even want the casket scene. There's other things that happen in this movie. Like, there's a Blood Brothers scene where they, like, cut each other and, like, touch the blood. And, like, in Europe, they actually had, like, an HIV warning on this movie.
That's hilarious. Well, and you know what? Here's the thing, though. As devastating as that is, I think it's important to show these things, maybe not in kids' movies, but in family movies. I think it's important to show these aspects of real life in family movies. And it, you know, it probably gave some people an opportunity to talk about this stuff with their kids, or, you know, to show their kid something that they could actually relate to.
Right.
Because when you lose a friend as a child, like, you don't see a lot of that. And so it feels really lonely.
Yeah. I can't relate to that. I didn't really ever lose anybody close to my age until a couple years ago with our friend Evan. So I can't really relate to that, but I do remember, you know, my great-grandfather passed away. I was fortunate enough to know my great-grandfather, but my first real one where it was like somebody I was very, very close to was my grandfather, and I was in high school. So I was fortunate enough to not really have to deal with that as a young child.
Right.
So I can't really relate to that, but
this movie, it hits
it
the
makes
nail on
you
the head.
feel like it, though. Like, I mean, as a kid watching this movie, I felt like I knew Macaulay Culkin,
right?
Because I watched Home Alone like almost every day for several years. So yeah.
Another thing that's kind of dark about this movie, they name it My Girl.
Yeah.
After that song that goes, I've got so much honey, the bees envy me.
Oh my God.
Interesting.
Oh my God. I didn't put that together at all. Oh my God.
Bold choice, guys.
Oh man.
Bold choice.
Oh. Well, this movie almost wasn't called My Girl. So at one point it was called something else, and then people thought it was weird, and then it was called like Veda, and then it was called, let me see, I found something for it. So the original title was Born Jaundiced, which producers thought it was weird.
Oh my God, I love that though.
They offered a $500 incentive to whoever at Imagine Entertainment could come up with a different
Born
title.
Jaundiced.
So originally they had Morning Glory, but mourning like when you mourn death. In Lieu of Flowers, Dearly Departed, and then Veda. And then eventually Brian Grazer, who's the producer of the film, came up with My Girl, and he took the $500 to himself.
That's hilarious. You know, so when he died at the funeral scene, I cried my eyes out at this movie. I did too. And, you know, it was less the movie and more like my own
your memories,
childhood experience.
Right.
But this movie is so freaking good, and the characters are so good, and the script is so good. I love the characters and their dialogue. It's great. It's easy to watch. It's entertaining, and I'm glad we revisited this movie.
Me too. Like, I mean, we didn't hit everything, obviously. We didn't really talk about Dan Aykroyd's character that much. And, like, there are actually several scenes where you see the uncle talk about how Dan Aykroyd used to be.
I love the grandmother.
Oh, the grandmother. Oh, that scene where the grandmother, like, has a... Like, she has dementia, but there's a point... Like, she's mute almost the entire movie. And then there's a point...
She sings, though.
She sings every once in a while. She gets up in the middle of a funeral and, like, walks up, takes a flower off of the casket and starts singing in front of, like, the whole...
Right. And that's, like, another thing that I love that they show. Because, you know...
Because that's how it is.
People deal with their elders having dementia. And, you know... For the most part, it's really freaking hard. But sometimes there are funny moments and... You just need to laugh to get through it. And I love that they show both sides of that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like, it showed, like, a full family. Like,
yeah.
I think there's something that every person who watches this movie will connect to somehow.
Yeah.
I've got nothing else.
I've got nothing else, and I'm melting.
Okay. So what are we going to watch next time?
Next time we're doing The Rocketeer.
Yes!
Which I have not seen.
You've never seen The Rocketeer?
If I've seen it, it's been a very long time and I don't remember it.
Oh, man. I love that movie. And of course, we'll talk about it in the next one. So, of course, hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and tell us what you remember about The Rocketeer, Disney's The Rocketeer. And, yeah, that's it. So, where can our listeners find you, Kat?
I'm all over the internet at Katrinaosity.
And we actually are doing something a little bit different. We've had a lot of people ask us to put our podcast up on YouTube. I guess people have YouTube. Was it YouTube Red? Mm-hmm. So you can listen to stuff even with your screen closed. So we've gone ahead and every episode of Remake Rewind and Ruin My Childhood are now on YouTube. So we're going to put a link in the description. So please like, follow, subscribe. Katrina's the YouTube person. So I'll let her tell you what to do on the YouTube. What do they need to do for YouTube?
The main thing that you can do on YouTube is watch the whole video or listen to the whole video. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and if you enjoy this, then share the content.
And we were actually going to do a contest to we need to get to a certain number of subscribers so we can get our custom URLs. So what we're going to do is we're going to give away an autographed copy of a movie and some of Dustin's artwork from Remake Rewind for people who subscribe. So we're going to pick a random subscriber and give you guys this prize. So all you got to do is like, comment on a video, and subscribe, and we will do a number generator and give a prize to somebody. So
yep, check out the details for that on our Instagram.
And I'll also link it. I'll do some sort of link on Twitter as well. And probably do like a little YouTube video as well as explaining what we're going to do. But that's pretty much it. We'll give you some more details about that pretty soon. Other than that, check us out Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at MDXpods. And that's it. Thank you guys.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.